All right, guys, welcome back. We're going to continue our documentary here about the history of subversion in America, our eternal fight for liberty, and our eternal fight for freedom. So today we're going to talk about the Great Seal of the United States, which is the symbols on the dollar bill. We're going to talk about John Wilkes Booth, his bloodline, and we're going to talk about the Act of 1871. So to recap what we did last episode, we're going to reread part of Charles Francis Adams' A Chapter of Erie from 1869. So this Adams is the same family as John Quincy Adams, the founder of the anti-Masonic Republican Party that we talked about, and of course John Adams, the founding father. So like the theme we talked about in the previous episodes, the founding fathers were very different in their beliefs on human nature, and what we talked about last episode, the Hamiltonian, big government, central bank, ecumenical, Freemasonic North, and then you have the Jeffersonian, liberty-loving, agrarian, small government South. So what we're reading right here is written by an Adams, who is a true patriot. It was written in 1869, and we also talked about last episode, the rise of the titans of industry, how the whole government was basically cut in half and the South was controlled by the military. So you had a single-minded government, and it was the Union who was in complete control. And of course, after the Civil War, because war is a racket, we see the rise of the Rockefellers, the Vanderbilts, and these Carnegies, and the massive titans of industry. So in 1869, 5 years after the war, Adams is writing about a war going on over the Erie Railroad system in New York. This involves Carnegie, so here we go. Our leading feature of these developments, however, is, from its political aspect, especially worthy of the attention of the American people. Modern society has created a class of artificial beings who bid fair soon to be the masters of their creator. It is but a very few years since the existence of a corporation controlling a few millions of dollars was regarded as a subject of grave apprehension. And now this country already contains single organizations which wield a power represented by hundreds of millions of dollars. These bodies are the creatures of single states. But in New York, in Pennsylvania, in Maryland, in New Jersey, and not in those states alone, they are already establishing despotisms, which no spasmodic popular effort will be able to shake off. Everywhere and at all times, however, they illustrate the truth of the old maxim of the common law, that corporations have no souls. Only in New York has any intimation yet been given of what the future may have in store for us should these great powers become more tools in the hands of ambitious, reckless men. The system of corporate life and corporate power, as applied to industrial development, is yet in its infancy. It tends always to development, always to consolidation. It is ever grasping new powers or insidiously exercising covert influence. Even now, the system threatens the central government. Extremely wise words from Mr. Adams, because 2 years after he wrote that, the completely union-controlled federal government incorporated Washington, D.C. as a corporation. And some of the language in here alludes to the dangers, right? People were really smart back then. It's ridiculous. Let me go back to it real quick, because notice he talks about, right here it says, modern society has created a class of artificial beings. And when we get to the part where we talk about maritime admiralty law, the Act of 1871, and the Corporation of Washington, D.C., and the beast system we're all involved in, it involves the creation of a class of artificial beings. They create a corporate body out of all of us. So, you know, you're Jay Whitney, the human, you're whoever, the human, and you're also the corporate body. Enter your name. So that's going to come back. And that's what he's talking about right here. And he says that the system of corporate life and corporate power is threatening the central government. And what he's talking about is what would happen in 1871, this system. So that's pretty much where we left off. America comes out of the war, and it's not looking good. The history books make it seem really good, but it wasn't looking too good. And now where we're going to start is the Great Seal. So what we're reading from here is, here's the cover of it, first of all. So familiar stuff to all of us. We got the pyramid, skull and bones, the globe with the wings representing Isis. We have the anchor, the braided rope. So this is a book. And then it shows the Great Seal. That's what we're going to be talking about. This book is called Fundamental Laws, a report of the 68th Convocation of the Rose Cross Order. This is one of the sources that Bill Cooper read on his Mystery Babylon series back in the day. Subtitle, Giving a Resume of the Proceedings of the Convocation, together with most of the lectures that were delivered during the time of the convocation by the several delegates present. Also, a report of the work of ancient initiation in the Grove of Osiris, as especially prepared for the occasion. Then we have another pyramid with a cross, a sun symbol, and a three-tiered base representing those 3 degrees of the Osirian Brotherhood, or the 3 degrees of the Blue Lodge, as Masons call it. So, let's paint a picture of the setting here. The people taking part in the Order of the Rose Cross, it's similar to Masonry. In fact, in the 1956 time structure of Freemasonry, they showed the Order of the Rose Cross as being part of, I believe, the Scottish Rite, or the I don't care. I don't remember. It's part of Freemasonry. It's it's in the same family. But the Order of the Rose Cross goes back to Rosicrucianism, which is what Rosicrucian means, Rosy Cross. And it goes back a long time, and it comes from the Age of Enlightenment. It's another one of these fraternal brotherhood, reading society, secret societies, and very often Luciferian. So in order to understand what's going on here, this is the upper class of the Union. So the people taking part in this in 1916, right? You got a picture, obviously, this is happening in the North. They are the educated, college-educated class, the ecumenical, Freemasonic, enlightened, aristocracy. So for a few weeks in the summer, they went out into the country, and they went into the woods to find a grove. And when they found a grove, for like 3 days, they set up and did Osirian initiations, and they also have lectures given. And they likely were all dressed in like ancient Greek clothing. This is what they did. And we're going to be reading one of those lectures that was given at the Grove in the woods. And it might remind you of Bohemian Grove. So that's the environment this is taking place in. Similar to Bohemian Grove, but not out in California, 1916. And one of the lectures is about the seal of the United States, because apparently the seal obviously has 2 sides, right? There's 2 symbols on that dollar bill, and one of them has the eagle and stuff. The one with the pyramid was denounced by the country since 1776, and it wasn't until 1916, this says, that they were finally able to publicize it. It existed the whole time, but the rest of our country, aka the Jeffersonian Agrarian Liberty-Loving Confederacy, what would eventually be the Confederacy, those people, the Adams-minded people, the Jefferson-minded people, were completely against the seal being this Illuminati pyramid because they knew what it was. And of course, after the Civil War, once the Union has established complete power, in 1916, around then, they start putting it out to the public, putting it on money, putting it on buildings and symbols and logos. So let's learn about it. You're not going to hear a more true report about these symbols. This is incredible reading. So let me get some water. Remember, this is taking place in a grove. Okay, a truly mystic seal. The Great Seal of the United States and its mystic significance. Most Americans have a dim idea that the Great Seal of their country shows an eagle, a constellation of stars, an olive branch signifying peace, and a set of 13 arrows, which probably means war in case of necessity. But few have ever seen the reverse side of the seal, or even suspected its existence. Nor has a reverse side ever been cut. That means it's never been, engraved or anything. A strangely restraining hand having seemingly been laid upon every attempt to bring it before the public. When the large painting of the reverse side, which was ordered made together with the familiar obverse for the government display at the Chicago World's Fair, was to be hung, those in charge exclaimed, quote, "What a peculiar design! Why were we given this inartistic symbol?" End quote. And once more the white stone was rejected. The painting was turned face to the wall, and only the obverse side was displayed. But the time has now come when the full knowledge of her seal shall be made known to her people. For America must henceforth stand before the world as its teacher, leader, and the promulgator of a new and perfect system of ethics, religious leadership, a citizenship that is efficient and free, a just industrial democracy, and a justice and generosity to other nations that shall emphasize the brotherhood of man and the fatherland of God. Sound familiar? Same agenda. Late in the afternoon of July 4th, 1776, the new Continental Congress, Franklin, Adams, Jefferson, created a committee to prepare a device for the seal of the United States of America. That committee was identical, except for the omission of Robert Livingston and Roger Sherman, with that which had drawn up the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration had been signed at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and Congress desired to at once complete the evidences of the independence of the U.S. by formally adopting an official sign of sovereignty and a national coat of arms. The arms of England, the mother country, expressed the union of Judah's lion with the unicorn of lost Israel. I can actually show you real quick. So on the left you have the Lion of Judah, and then on the right you have the unicorn of the lost tribe of Israel. That's what the unicorn represents, the 13th tribe. We'll be learning about that. Okay. And that's in accordance with the science of heraldry. I don't know how to pronounce it. Heraldry. So that's the science of like these coats of arms, insignias, badges. There's a science to it. It's a mystical science. It's a very, upper class thing. Okay, continuing. But the young republic had finished with thrones and crowns and must blaze a new path through the forest of liberty, which should express her descent from all Christian nations and hold open a door for all other races, which should seek help and shelter upon her shores. Lowercase Christian. So yeah, they're saying America's destiny is to break away from the Christian society. Continuing, a knowledge of heraldry was considered a part of an education in the early colonial days, and it was through William Barton, son of the rector of St. James Episcopal Church of Philadelphia, learned in heraldry, and through Baron Prestwich of England, that the designs expressive of American destiny were given and drawn. So there's your two makers of it, Baron Prestwich and William Barton. Yet other dabblers in heraldry failed utterly to understand the mystic meaning of the seals. Professor Charles Eliot Norton of Harvard regretted its lack of art and complained it could never be other than a dull Masonic emblem, while a Mr. Wilson, considered a great historical scholar, declared the reverse side, quote, in very bad taste, unintelligent, and commonplace. If it can be laid away and kept in the dark, why not keep it so, end quote. Even the constellation of 13 stars came in for criticism as, quote, very bad heraldically, end quote. Again and again, the pyramid with the white capstone and the glory were rejected, until in 1916 members of the Rose Cross Order, the Illuminati, and others of the six-pointed star of the seal hung it officially in their classrooms and declared it as expressive of their philosophy religion, the Bible wisdom of the common people rather than of the collegian. It's a very important little paragraph right there. So he makes the argument beforehand that all the other people in the colleges and government just said, oh, it's just ugly. It's too common, blah, blah, blah. It's a dull Masonic symbol. When really people knew what all of this represented, and they were probably completely against it. They knew it was heretical, anti-Christian, Luciferian. So they always write themselves to be such good people. But this little paragraph right here says, the Rose Cross Order and the Illuminati and others of the six-pointed star of the seal. What does that mean? Well, I believe it's the book of Revelations. The Bible talks about the synagogue of Satan, how in the end times there will be a false church, and that false church will claim to be Jewish, and they'll claim to be, the true sons of Israel when they're not. And that's pretty much what we got going on today. So the way these occultists, these Masons and Rosicrucians and all these groups, when they see the Star of David, they see a star representing 6 orders. 2 of those are the Rose Cross Order and the Illuminati, and the other ones will be listed a little bit later in this. So keep that in mind. It's a seal of Satan for the synagogue of Satan. It's biblical. So the Israeli flag is evil. Israel's evil. It is. Pretty fascinating. Let's continue. Oh, and then he says it's 1916, and what they've decided to do is to use the common man's biblical wisdom against him and saying, no, we are going to display this seal because it's part of our religion. Just mocking us. That's how these people talk at their convocations. Continuing. In the two sides of our seal are expressed the heraldry, countless ages of the evolution of man, from the time of his so-called fall, through his progress in Egypt, or Eagle Land, where for a time a wondrous race incarnated to build astounding monuments, receding but returning again as the Hebraic Confederation, to receive the knowledge of ancient Atlantis in the shade of its ancient altar, the Great Pyramid, uniting in a blaze of glory in the building of Solomon's Temple, parting, the northern tribes to leaven, though lost to history, all Europe, Judah and part of Benjamin and Levi returning to hold Jerusalem until the Master Jesus should be born, journey down into Egypt to the ancient altar and receive light yet left in that land of darkness. In that day shalt there be an altar to the Lord, a pillar in the midst of Egypt, upon the borders thereof, and it shall be for a sign and a witness unto the Lord, said Isaiah. It is needless for learned historians to tell us, who hold the records, that the Great Pyramid is but 6,000 years old, for we know it to have been built when the morning stars sang together, and the sons of God shouted for joy in the far Edenic period, when Atlantis, the mighty, stood in her purity, where in part America now stands. Built at the center of the earth, as a temple of the highest initiation, symbolic of a perfect man, foursquare in body, mind, soul, and spirit. With its white capstone, symbol of complete immortality, it represents the measure of the earth, as well as that of the universe, and the evolution of man, through those countless ages of reincarnation now drawing to a close. Very mystical paragraph. Let's talk about it. He's saying the megalithic structures in Egypt were created by Atlantis. This is what they believe. Atlantis was flooded a very long time ago by God. We know about the flood, right? Atlantis created colonies, and one of the colonies was Egypt. The pyramids and many other megalithic structures that could not have been created by the dynastic Egyptians were created by Atlantis, according to this belief system. And what he's saying is that they were wiped out by the flood, but then this Hebraic Confederation would carry on the Atlantean tradition, and that's the synagogue of Satan, right? The group of 6 orders that are gathered together at this convocation, those types of people. And there's some language in here that's fascinating as well. He says, it is needless for learned historians to tell us, who hold the records, that the Great Pyramid is about 6,000 years old. So what he's saying is, these ridiculous historians trying to tell us the pyramid's 6,000 years old, we have the records. The Rose Cross Order has the records. Freemasonry, we have the history. These guys are holding secret history, and that's what he's saying right here. He's saying, don't tell me how old the pyramid is, because it's not 6,000 years old. It was built by Atlantis, by the Atlanteans. And he says, back in that time when it was built, the morning stars sang together, and the sons of God shouted for joy. Well, what's the morning star symbolic of? Lucifer, right? So what Lucifer represents is these people's belief that man can attain deity, apotheosis. It can become God. Man can become God. So what he's saying is, back when the pyramids were built by the Atlanteans, the morning stars were all singing together, meaning that society, the world, people had come together and had achieved Christ consciousness, which is what they call it even to this day. And the sons of God shouted for joy, literally meaning that all of these humans are gods. Yeah, this is what they believe. Pretty crazy. Continuing in this paragraph, this will blow your mind as well. When it's talking about the pyramid, it says it's the perfect symbolic representation of a man, 4 square. So you have the square on the bottom of the pyramid, right? You have the square on your hat when you graduate, the Masonic compass in square, okay? And then you have the 4 identical sides. So 4 square in body, mind, soul, and spirit. So that's what, that's one of the symbolic meanings of the 4 sides of the pyramid, right? Also, it says, the pyramid represents the measure of the earth. Well, you can go ahead and look this up. the diameter, the circumference, and all the mathematics of the globe are encoded in the pyramid. So if you believe in the Bible cosmology, what that tells us is the people who created globe theory used the Great Pyramid of Egypt as their mathematical base. They used it and they just built off of it and used the numbers for the proportions of the globe. Look up like Randall Carlson talk about the pyramid. He's a high degree Freemason and he'll explain this to you. It's quite confusing, but the dimensions of the pyramid are proportionally the same to the dimensions of the globe. And what these people believe is that there was a race back in time that was smart enough to figure that out. They believe space is real, but then the Christian, biblical narrative states that the earth is not a ball, right? So it's very interesting. They have a whole esoteric school of thought behind space and everything. It's quite fascinating. So when they say that the Great Pyramid it represents the measure of the earth, think about that. If you're going to believe the Bible, that means a couple hundred years ago when they came up with globe theory, they went to Egypt and they used the Great Pyramid, their beloved symbol, as the mathematical basis for the dimensions of the globe. Mind-blowing. Okay, let's continue here. Thither the Atlanteans went for instruction in its galleries and rooms at the hands of mighty priest of the priest of Melchizedek, and Osirian brotherhoods, and throughout the succeeding ages, those who would attain self-mastery have turned their footsteps towards the ancient centers. Everyone from Pythagoras to Plato to Napoleon were initiated inside the Great Pyramid. Still happens to this day. That's the initiation they're doing in this grove, the Osirian 3-degree initiation, and that's what the Masonic Blue Lodge is based off of, the first 3 degrees. There is a asterisk after Melchizedek. I want you to listen to this footnote and put yourself back in time. This is what life was like back then. Footnote. As this book is being printed, we received information of 2 associations using the title, quote, Order of Melchizedek, end quote, or like it. One is a spiritualistic body and the other is a pure fraud. Neither body has the right to the title, as this belongs to the Magi, who has used it for unknown years. Any body of men claiming or using this title does so without any authority, and they are not members of the Order of Melchizedek, given by order of the Royal Fraternity Association, Incorporated. Just shows you how serious and how widespread and how popular all of this was, that you had multiple orders of Melchizedek. So, we were never a Christian nation. We were, especially after the Civil War. What Christianity built this nation was killed after the Civil War. The Union killed it. These people killed it. We gotta bring it back. Okay, let's continue. The last Cumean song now comes, wrote Virgil, who prophesies that a race should arise which would be offspring of all races and bring to an end the ages of iron, war, and usher in the golden age. Virgil, the poet, these ages, Golden Age, Iron Age, this comes from Vedic Eastern tradition, where what we call the zodiac, the 26,000-year process of the equinox, or the precession of the equinoxes, they call the yugas, and it's broken into seasons, and some of the seasons are gold, iron, bronze, silver, and astrologically, we actually are leaving the Iron Age, entering the Gold Age as we leave Pisces into Aquarius. So, these aren't just expressions. They are literally, their interpretation of the stars has always told them that now is a time that this new Atlantean society is going to rise again, and America is the vehicle of that, and that's what we're watching today with the Great Reset. It's fascinating. Let's continue. Hence it was fitting that the mottos upon the reverse side of our seal, above and below the pyramid, should be taken from Virgil, Annuit coeptus, prosper us in our daring, and Novus Ordo Seclorum, a new and select order, which many of us have now the honor to have entered, and whose door we hold open to all who will accomplish the spiritual work necessary. The day of freedom dawned upon the earth, and the infinite cycle of Atlantis was begun anew, wrote a poet of the American Republic. In Central America, there yet stands a companion pyramid, And to those of you that are interested in the megaliths and stuff, yes, Peru and parts of the Mayan Empire were Atlantean colonies as well. The megalithic parts. Key to the connection of Atlantis, Egypt, and now American Atlantis rising again upon the Great Cycle. Hence, arcane and Magian learning, which is the source of the Bible, could give no other symbolism to the young republic than that of the ancient pyramid, its capstone in glory, significant of the descent of the New Jerusalem, for the one side, and the eagle, the ever-repeating 13 of Manasseh, 13th tribe of Israel, and the son of Joseph, today who we call Britain, who was separated from his brethren in Egypt in the parting asunder of northern Israel from southern Judah, and first across Europe in search of the isles afar off to reestablish the ancient throne of Israel at Tava in Ireland. So this is what they truly believe about the Bible. They truly, truly, truly believe that Jesus was a teacher and that the Bible is a cult and, astrological, and it's just like all the other religious texts in the world. That's why they're talking about this 13th tribe of Israel and this guy going to find the isles afar off, this 13th tribe led by Joseph. He's like, I'm going to find Atlantis, and then went to Britain, and that's their story for the origins of Britain and that wonderful royal center of the world over there. This thing on your screen, seal. See this unicorn? That's what the guy's referring to when he's talking about the 13th tribe going afar off to find the afar off isles in Britain. Holders of the true wisdom, they say. Yes. Okay, continuing. Turning the hitherto rejected reverse side of our seal to face the people of these United States, we remind them that they are called to a great work, capitalized, as offspring of all races, a mighty Manasseh, whose history began in Genesis and culminates in America, and by whose stripes the whole world must be healed. Joseph, our father, married a daughter of a priest of the temple of On in Egypt. We are told, and today one pillar of that ancient temple stands in London, while its mate stands in New York. What's he talking about? Central Park, there's an obelisk, a true Egyptian obelisk, and there's one in London as well. And there were always at least two obelisks that flanked the entrance to the ancient temples, and whether they're Atlantean or the later Egyptian, rebuilt renditions of the temples. And those two obelisks still exist today, and yeah, they are in New York and London. And they're saying here that the 13th tribe leader, Joseph, married a daughter of a priest from the temple of On in Egypt. And let me see if I can show you real quick. Let's go ahead and look at the unfinished obelisk. We've looked at this before, but it's very important to understand what they're hiding from us and the lies they tell us about history. They see this giant stone, 1,200 tons. A true Egyptian obelisk, 9 of them remain, I believe, across the world. They're in all the Illuminati global power centers of the world. They're all one stone. This was carved out of granite, which is one of the hardest stones, Aswan granite, as if it was warm butter. Look at the little alleyway where my mouse is. There's no way any civilization known to history could have quarried and moved these single stone giant obelisks. So there is evidence to what they believe in. There is, maybe the story's different or wrong, but at some point in the past, the people who made the pyramids, the people who are cutting these obelisks, were capable of either manipulating nature or capable of acquiring some level of technology that we can't even fathom. And this is work you can go check out. Christopher Dunn, YouTube channel Uncharted X, Brian Forrester, Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson. This is widely known information now. This is incredible stuff. And they have one of these in Central Park in New York. So that's what he's talking about. Let's continue. These are reminders of our connection with Egypt, with all of Europe, and with our father Joseph as an Anglo-Saxon culmination of all Israel, and that through our union between those pillars must all the world pass into Ephraim or Shiloh, the millennium to which Israel alone of all nations looked forward, and by the measure of whose 12 tribes the whole earth was apportioned. I think that's supposed to say Israel. Maybe. The whole Bible is written in the stars, both the law and the gospel, while esoterically the entire story of man is set forth upon the sea of Manasseh. The obverse side is Israel in the Old Testament. The reverse side is the offspring of all of Israel under the New Covenant as the hope and outcome of Christianity. So there's some blasphemy for you. He's saying the two seals on the dollar bill, one represents the Old Testament, the other represents the New Testament. The pyramid represents the New Testament. Unbelievable, dude. That's blasphemy. To say that anything on a piece of money represents our Lord, it's horrible, dude. It's what these people believe. The two sides reflect each other and cannot be separated, being the Bible in its most condensed form, summing up all Old World history in 12-tribed Israel, says Professor Totten. Long ages before the discovery of America, Merlin the king, Arthur's court, wrote of our constellation the 13 stars. So that symbol of the 13 stars on the front of the seal above the eagle's head, that makes the seal of Satan. This 13-star prophecy comes from Merlin in King Arthur's court. So we're going way back, right? Listen to this. When the cock shall woo the dove, mother and child shall cease to love. When the cock shall guard the eagle's nest, the stars shall rise all in the west. Then 7 and 6 shall make but one, the lion's might shall be undone. So what that is a magical alchemical prophecy that predicted America. Let's read it with the parentheses. When the cock, France, shall woo the dove, the colonies, America. Remember, France had an Illuminati revolution the same time we did. Mother and child shall cease to love, rebellion of the colonies. When the cock, France, shall guard the eagle's nest, France's aid. The stars, or the 13 colonies, shall rise all in the west. Remember, the 13 stars on the dollar bill, the seal. Then 7 and 6 shall make but one, e pluribus unum. The lion's might shall be undone. Who's the lion? Boom. The lion. England. Is your mind melting? Yeah. The stars upon our seal are set in the form of a 6-pointed star or a double triangle. This was anciently called Solomon's seal and was embroidered upon the curtain of the temple, which hung before the Holy of Holies. In Solomon's temple, Holy of Holies was a cube-shaped altar in the center, and it was blocked off. Only the highest priest could go in, and the curtains that blocked it had what we call the Star of David on it, the symbol of Israel, right? Solomon's seal. At each point of the star was placed the symbol of an order, which set forth arcane wisdom, and no man might pass into the Holy of Holies, save he had mastered the learning of these orders with safety to himself, because of the presence upon the altar within. Remember, the Star of David has nothing to do with Jewish people. Nothing to do. Israel is lying. Here's what the seal of Satan means. Today in America, we have the restoration of this knowledge. These are the 6 orders. The Order of Illuminati, the Order of the Rose Cross, the Ancient Order of Alchemists, the Fraternity of Osiris, the Magi, and the 8th Priesthood. That's what that symbol represents. Freemasonry falls under one of those. Wow. The especial symbol of America, aside from the pyramid and eagle, is the white rose, identical in meaning with the white stone. The constellation of 13 stars within early drawings set in a wreath of white roses, showing that the early designers knew the future of American individual spiritual development. It is now drawn set in white clouds, but the white rose is ever the symbol of the American Rose Cross Order and stands for spiritual attainment. Solomon's temple was the temple of a perfect man, and the Bible tells us of a 3-cornered capstone, which was rejected, but later became the headstone of the corner. We hear too in Genesis of Joseph, the keeper of the stone of Israel. And it was the Magi or Holy Grail teachings that the Britons crossed Europe to Azareth, land of Betrothal, in search of, a land where they might keep God's worship pure and undefiled. So they're saying the 13th tribe, once again, travels all the ways to Britain in pursuit of a land where they can allegedly keep God's worship pure and undefiled, And they only were able to make it there using the Magian or Holy Grail teaching. So there's your definition of the Holy Grail. You can go tell people that now. It's a body of teachings belonging to the 13th tribe of Israel, tribe of Joseph. This is what the occult believes, not me. All right, we got some blasphemy coming up. Hence, through Joseph, who was separated from his brethren, we inherit the white stone of all Israel, capstone of the pyramid and of Solomon's temple, that rock upon which Jesus reminded Peter he should build his church, the rock of spiritual unfoldment within each individual, that the gates of hell or death should not prevail against it, my little children of whom I travail in birth, again until Christ be formed in you. Gross. But real quick, if you don't know, Israel, Israel, Isis, Ra, El. El is the Hebrew word for God, right? Isis and Ra being the ancient Egyptian solar and lunar deities. That's what that word really means. They made it up. They made up Israel, and they brought back the seal of Solomon not too long ago. They want you to believe that it's 3,000 years old and that the Jews have been waving that flag forever. It's not true. Not true at all. Let's continue. Thus it was keeping that an Englishman, master of heraldry, should give to the young republic in the midst of its struggles to separate from the mother country the design for the Great Seal, which should express the whole future of its work as a world teacher and exponent of the Christic teachings of the Holy Grail. So, the role of America is to expand on the Christic teachings of the Holy Grail. So the Holy Grail is the knowledge required for man to achieve Christ consciousness or apotheosis and become a god himself. Really not that exciting. All that Dan Brown stuff, all that, yeah. That's how they do it. They just lure you in with symbolism. But it's just like it's a false religion. That's what we're reading right here. But that's the whole point of America, and these people are that powerful. This is who won the Civil War. Yeah, this is what they're doing today. This is what the Great Reset is. This has been in the works. It's been in the stars forever. It's been in the works for probably centuries, if not a millennium or more. Let's continue. The all-seeing eye looks down upon the ancient pyramid, which too symbolizes America in all she must mean to the world. Out of a glory, sign of the descent of the New Jerusalem. This emblem, the eye, is as old as man's appearance upon earth, being found upon ancient Chaldean monuments, Egyptian and Greek, while the Arabians looking upon it named it the highest and holiest name of God, with hushed voices and whispered, I am that I am. The triangle about the eye stood from the most arcane times as the emblem of the Trinity, of Osiris, Isis, and Horus, Father, Holy Ghost, and Son, as they stand today with us, and in which is sealed the law of the eternal three of the universe, and of men as its highest product. Although writing is as old as Atlantis and Adam, the only legend set in the Great Pyramid is esoteric, in numbers, measures, and weights, and in them may be read the ages just completed and the prophecy of those yet to come. Very confusing sentence, but the important thing to know is that in numbers, measures, and weights may be read the ages just completed and the prophecy of those yet to come. Basically saying if you take gematria and numerology and all these esoteric sciences seriously, holy crap, they're telling you everything. Of these great ages, each with its leader as set forth in the application of the legend, so the stone kingdom cut out without hands, the greatest of all was the master initiate Jesus, who became the Christ, who descended into the grave and rising, ascended master over death, into heaven before the eyes of his disciples. Him, especially in the return of the Christ age, does the white capstone represent, and after him, America, as exponent of his teaching and life, America now prepares to become the headstone of all the world's ages, when God in the Christ shall descend to crown the edifice of human liberty and immortality completed. Just blasphemy. We're going to stop there. Let's talk about this initiation. So in this text, they go on to describe the Osirian initiation. So its origins are Atlantean, and it was practiced in ancient Egypt, of course, in the pyramids and the temples. Now, all the occult societies and the secret societies have a version of this. You've probably heard the story of Skull and Bones at Yale University and how George Bush was the ritual. They lay down in a coffin and they tie something on his wiener, right? And then He's raised from the dead out of the coffin, and he's rebirthed, okay? In Freemasonry, when you reach the third degree, they do this ritual where you get killed for not revealing the secret, and they raise you from the dead, right? In the Osirian mysteries, you are reborn. So all of these things are the same. All these rituals are the same, and what they do is they mock the death of Christ and the resurrection of Christ, Jesus, Yeshua, the real God. They mock the death and resurrection of our Savior, probably because they're jealous that God is real. And this is just how things have formed over time. And all of those rituals in which people are raised from the dead, they are all a mockery. And basically, they center around man being reborn as a god, reaching Christ consciousness. Whether it's yoga, Freemasonry, it's all the same. New Age, phony Christianity, Rosicrucianism, Luciferianism. It's all centered with self. And I'm not going to get into the theological arguments about it. Theosophic Society, that's another one of these groups. But God is definitely real. Put it that way. These people hate God so much, it's ridiculous. Okay, that's where we're going to end here. Pretty incredible, right? So now you know the meaning of the seals on the dollar bill. Wow. Old and New Testament, 13th tribe, broke away from England, tribe of Joseph, traveled across Europe, settled Britain, and then now America is breaking away to become the New Jerusalem, resurrecting the synagogue of Satan, the six-pointed star, with those six groups they talked about. Incredible. Merlin's prophecy about the 13 stars, then the pyramid representing Atlantis, and so much great information. Incredible, right? So why do we talk about that? I wanted to get us in that mind state of mysticism, and I want to really show you the power players who won the Civil War. This is who won the Civil War. People like this. The college people, the business people, the fraternity people, the secret society people, they won the Civil War. They took over the government after the Civil War. So, speaking of that, we're going to talk about Booth, John Wilkes Booth. So, I don't even know where to start. John Wilkes Booth, I'm gonna take a break. And when I get back, we're going to talk about Booth. And this is going to blow your mind. Wait until you hear about his bloodline, and wait until you hear about some of the things he did in life. Absolutely crazy. Okay, we're back. Okay. John Wilkes Booth. The Booth family, first of all, are actors. Edwin Booth and John Booth are both sort of Shakespearean, which was kind of like a bad boy thing back then, believe it or not. They were Shakespearean actors. And I believe the father and the grandfather were also actors. So they were aristocracy, upper class, enlightened individuals, and they definitely were on the occulty side of things. First of all, his sister's name is Asia. That's who wrote this book we're going to be reading. Of course, a reference to the East, and then some of the family names, when we look through the genealogy, you'll see like Lucius, which is Lucifer. You'll see Brutus and all sorts of names associated and revered by Masonry and other groups like that. So this book is called, let me go to the title page for you. This book is called The Unlocked Book, and it's written by Asia Clark Booth, his sister, John Wilkes' sister. And I think there's more than one book, so make sure you get the Unlocked Book, because the other one is like northern written history garbage, and this one is like a real unfiltered account of her life, John Wilkes' life, the family's life. It's fascinating. So we're going to be reading from a few pages here, and by the end you're going to see that John Wilkes Booth was definitely an occultist and member of a society or multiple societies. And then when I get into the genealogy and I show you his bloodline, who he really was, it's going to be so plain as day. It's going to blow your mind. It's going to be absolutely crazy. Okay, let's see here. Give me a second. Okay, hold on here. All right, so our first little clue comes from page 72. Wilkes' bedroom was facing the east, he said, quote, "No setting sun view for me. It is too melancholy. Let me see him rise," end quote, which he frequently did. So, obviously a reference to Lucifer there, calling the sun him, facing his bedroom to the east to watch him rise. So that was the first thing I read, and I was like, But then it continues and says, which he frequently did, coming home from the hunt and the know-nothing meetings, which were held at some secret place several miles distant. What's a know-nothing meeting? Well, the Confederacy, too, had its own occult groups, right? Masonry, of course, is all over the country. For example, here is an expose on the KGC, or the Knights of the Golden Circle. This was a Southern kind of Masonic occultic group, and might read from this in a little bit. You can see the same symbolism here with the pillars and the dome, the firmament, right? And then the triangle with some weird letters and signage in it. Another one of these very popular groups from back in that time. So let's go back here. So he liked to make sure his bedroom faced the east, and he also frequented know-nothing meetings in secret places. What else do we have here? 70, 72. Something else here I wanted to show you. Okay, now keep this in mind. Here's another from 2 pages before that. The Booths were related to John Wilkes through Elizabeth Wilkes, Asia's great-grandmother. So we're going to talk about, obviously, the genealogy. Remember John Wilkes, because this is where another very powerful family bloodline intersects, the Booth bloodline. John Wilkes. Okay, page 97. Took me forever to skim through this and find these again. Let's see here. We have a great story about Halloween. Okay, so there's a little moment. Let me see if I can find it here. So Wilkes is repairing a fence, because I guess on Halloween what they do is they would go around just like destroy fences, pull up crops, set animals free, and do stuff like that. All the kids in the neighborhood. And now we're going to read from page 97. Wilkes said, looking seriously up from a fence rail he was repairing, holding the hammer in one hand and the nail in the fingers of the other, quote, "Do you know that I believe you have a tinge of Jewish blood? You always cry revenge, and I notice that it strains your heart to forgive." So, there's a footnote for that, and here's what the footnote says. Zoom in for you. I have seen it suggested as a fact that there was a Jewish strain in the Booths, and Asia herself says elsewhere that in the synagogues her father was known as a Jew because he conversed with rabbis and learned doctors and joined their worship in the Hebraic tongue. Remember what we just read about, the Hebraic Confederacy, okay? And then listen to this. He read the Talmud also and strictly adhered to many of its laws. The Talmud. It's a dead giveaway. What synagogue was he a member of? Synagogue of Satan. That's what they're talking about. They're talking about Zionism. And when we look at the genealogy, it's going to blow your mind because the Booth name is really Botha. And once we go into what they were doing and who they claim to be in Europe, it's crazy. He read the Talmud also and strictly adhered to many of its laws. But then, it appears, he held all forms of religion and all their temples sacred. He never failed to bare his head reverently when passing a church. He worshipped at many shrines. He admired the Quran, and in his copy of that volume, many beautiful passages are underscored. Days sacred to color or in metals were religiously observed by him. This is ridiculously occult. And this is the same sort of stuff that the Rose Cross Order and Freemasonry, it's what they all do. This guy, did you hear that? Days sacred to color or in metals were religiously observed by him. It's extremely alchemical and occultish. Asia, unnamed till she was 2 years old, was nearly called Aisha in recollection of one of Mahomet's favorite wives. He also wished to call the little one Frigga, because she came to us on Friday, which day is consecrated to the northern Venus. But at last she was called Asia, in remembrance of that country where God first walked with man. What did I tell you before I even read this full footnote? I told you the author, Asia, named after it, and I said probably because these Freemasons and these occult groups love the East, and that's exactly what the footnote said. I hadn't even read the whole thing. So you can hear so many rich clues about the type of family the Booths were. And like I was just saying, Booth is actually Botha, and we'll get into that. And the Botha family claims to come from the Iberian Peninsula in Europe, and they claim to be a Jewish silver mining family. They were a very prominent, wealthy family in charge of silver mines, and they claim to be Jewish. But as you can tell by this description, this sounds like a Zionist. Like we talked about in the first thing we read, the flag of Israel, the Star of David, it's not what it says it is. These are new symbols. These are new ideas. The true meaning of this is the synagogue of Satan, right, from the Bible, the 6 occult schools that we heard in the other document. And you can hear right here that the Wilkes family clearly fits that complete mold. And that's clearly what that family was all about. So when you put all these little pieces together, and now you're about to learn who they're related to, you're going to see that the assassination of President Lincoln was a very, very orchestrated event. Okay, I got one more for you, just so you know we're dealing with psychopaths, right? Is this who won the Civil War? Let me tell you. I think Abraham Lincoln was either sacrificed or just killed off because these people, you just got to understand that religion's very different than what we're used to, people. Like, killing people isn't necessarily bad if it's pushing the great work forward. It's all about the great work. Dying isn't bad if it's all about the great work. Maybe he was okay with it. Like, this is how crazy these people are. Okay. So they're talking about the Halloween raid where they all go out at night and cause mischief. And listen to this quote from page 131. Our near neighbor vouched for, quote, the cruelty of Wilkes, who had destroyed valuable game and marketable fowl, destroyed innocent dogs and wild creatures for sport. Nothing was safe that came within range of his gun. He had left for dead a workman whom he had battered with a club. Then another swore that the visits of old Ishmael Day, who had become a hero of the North, were only made to try and discover what we rebels were up to, and not for friendship's sake, as we supposed. Okay, so Wilkes' neighbors claim that he would kill dogs for sport. That sounds like a lunatic. That sounds like a Age of Enlightenment type of person. So yeah, even not only on Halloween, Wilkes was just a scary person. He would kill game and marketable fowl. He killed innocent dogs and wild creatures for sport. Nothing was safe that came within range of his gun. He had left for dead a workman whom he had battered with a club. And Asia writes about that. When I was looking for that little quote, I read about that incident earlier, and he was a hothead. These people are crazy, absolutely crazy. Okay, let's get into his family bloodline. So, like I said, the name Booth originally comes from Botha, and I will show you right now. So we're on that classic genealogy website. And notice how at the top it says Richard Robert Booth, right? Well, his real name was Richard Botha, Esquire. They don't know when he was born, but he's from Spain. Okay, this is the Botha family I was talking about that were Zionist, Spanish silver miners. If you know anything about the New World, they blow out of proportion the role of the slave trade when it comes to North America. The real industry was sugar in the Caribbean and gold and silver in South America. That is where the vast majority of slaves went, and that is where the real cruelty, the real cruelty, not saying the American thing wasn't cruel, but that was, all the industry was in sugar, gold, and silver. And Spain dominated the New World from like the 1500s up until the Age of Enlightenment. They dominated gold and silver in the New World. So this Zionist colonizing family, the Bothas from Spain, are the ancestors of what would become the Booths. And they didn't always live in Spain. They originally come from Germany, and we're going to talk about that as well. And once you find out where the Botha family comes from, your mind's going to explode again. So once again, what we're doing right here is we're going to trace from Ricardo Botha all the ways to John Wilkes Booth. So Ricardo Botha seems to be the last of the Spanish silver mining part of this family's history, and he is the father of John Booth. So here's where the name changed to Booth. Now, John Booth was born in 1723, died in 1787, lived in England. He is the father of Richard Booth, Esquire, Israel Wilkes, Mary Booth, John Booth, etc. And I believe we're looking for Richard Booth, Esquire. So let's click on him. These are direct father to son path we're taking. Richard Booth, Esquire, 1759 to 1839. He is the father of Junius Brutus Booth. So once again, like the name Israel, right? Israel. Especially back then, it had nothing to do with the Israel that they've brainwashed everyone to believe is a thing today. When they named the kids Asia Sidney Booth and Israel Wilkes Booth, these are cult names. When they named someone Junius Brutus Booth, Brutus was the Ides of March, he killed Caesar. These are occult names. So Richard Booth was the father of Junius Brutus Booth, and this is when we get to the actors. This is the father of John Wilkes Booth, I believe. We're going to click on it right now. Come on. Junius Brutus Booth. It's, okay, it loaded. Also known as Nias. That was his nickname. I wonder what we can find out about that. 1796 to 1852, and now the Booth family is in Maryland, right? And he is the father of Richard Junius Booth. Oh, hold on. Lots of kids. Junius, Henry, Asia, John Wilkes Booth. There you go. Captain John Wilkes Booth. 1838 to 1865. Died of a gunshot wound. So there you go. There's your direct connection between Booth and the real surname Botha. So let's learn a little bit about Botha. Did you know the ruling bloodline European family in South Africa, which has been a place of turmoil, lies, genocide, and so much horror for quite some time, is the Botha family. And it's the same Botha family that we were just talking about. So here we have P.W. Botha. He was first elected to Parliament in South Africa in 1948, the same year Israel was created. Botha was an outspoken opponent of majority rule in international communism. However, his administration did make concessions towards political reform. And we have another Botha here. Let's see. Louis Botha. That's who we want to find. Another Botha here. Louis Botha. He came before P.W. Botha. So this is the one that we want to talk about. Louis Botha was a South African politician who was the first Prime Minister of the Union of South Africa, the forerunner of the modern South African state. A Boer War hero during the Second Boer War, he would eventually fight to have South Africa become a British dominion. In 1905, as Prime Minister, he called for the newly discovered Cullinan diamond to be presented to King Edward VII. So a colonizer, an imperialist, a diamond and gold hunting, illuminated, you know what. Same family. Same family. And not only that, guys, but check this out. There's a regiment today called the General Botha Regiment still in the Army. Let's take a look at some of their symbols. Of course, we got the sun right here. The General Botha Regiment is a reserve infantry regiment of the South African Army. The regiment was named after General Louis Botha, Prime Minister of South Africa. And you can see the lion symbol on their flag, right? The Lion of Judah, like from the seal of whatever it's called, England. The regiment was formed in Ermelo, I can't pronounce that, as part of an expansion of the Army's infantry branch. And let's look at some pictures here. Here's some of the symbolism used with it. Check out this pin, the horned. It looks like an antelope, but it kind of looks like a goat. Looks like a Baphomet, classic, not surprised. Then we have some stars over here. And the lion, of course, on top of this symbol. We got the swords and the wreath. Pretty fascinating. Same family. But it doesn't stop there. And once we get through this, we're going to do the Act of 1871. So let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. John Wilkes Booth, the Gotha. Okay, here's where Wilkes comes from. This is going to blow your mind too. John Wilkes. John Wilkes, remember in the book by Asia Booth, there was a footnote about this guy. John Wilkes was a British radical, journalist, and politician. He was first elected a member of Parliament in 1757 in the Middlesex election dispute. He fought for the right of his voters rather than the House of Commons to determine their representatives. In 1768, angry protests of his supporters were suppressed in the St. George Fields Massacre. In 1771, he was instrumental in obliging the government to concede the rights of printers to publish verbatim accounts of parliamentary debates. In 1776, he introduced the first bill for parliamentary reform in the British Parliament. This guy was one of those Enlightenment radicals. These are the actors that caused the French Revolution and caused the American Revolution, and they did it from an occult background, from a Freemasonic background. And here's a great example of that, right? Fighting for the people, so say the history books. Getting massacred at St. George's Field, so say the history books. But oftentimes when we look into these people, we see their intentions are for something much worse. So they play off the people's ignorance. And yeah. During the American War of Independence, he was a supporter of the American rebels, adding further to his popularity with the American Whigs. In 1780, however, he commanded militia forces, which helped put down the Gordon riots, damaging his popularity with many radicals. This marked a turning point, leading him to embrace increasingly conservative policies, which caused dissatisfaction among the progressive, radical, low-to-middle-income landowners. This was instrumental in the loss of his Middlesex parliamentary seat in the 1790 election, at the age of 65. Wilkes retired from politics and took no part in the social reforms following the French Revolution, such as the Catholic emancipation of the 1790s. During his life, he earned a reputation as a libertine. So this is where the Wilkes in John Wilkes Booth comes from. And just to put the icing on the cake to show you that these people are all insane, occultist, and now, ever since the Civil War, we live in a society that they create and control. Here is the Encyclopedia Britannica early life description of John Wilkes. Wilkes was the second son of Israel Wilkes, a successful malt distiller, and this is the one who married into the Booth family, I think. Once again, that name, Israel, Israel, it's not what you think it means. It's Isis, Ra, and the Hebrew word El for God. Wilkes was the second son of Israel Wilkes, a successful malt distiller. He was educated at an academy at Hertford, and afterward privately tutored. His marriage on May 23, 1747 to Mary Mead, heiress of the manor of Aylesbury, brought him a comfortable fortune and assured status among the gentry of Buckinghamshire. A profligate by nature, Wilkes became a member of the Congenial Society of the Medmenham Monks, members of the so-called Hellfire Club, who met occasionally in the ruins of St. Mary's Abbey at Medmenham, Buckinghamshire, to indulge in debauchery in the performance of black masses. Wow. You guys all know what a black mass is. What a black mass is. I'm pretty sure Franklin was part of the Hellfire Club. Not positive, but I think so. Medmenham monks. So once again, this appeal to Eastern religion, meeting in the ruins of St. Mary's Abbey to indulge in debauchery and the performance of black masses. Debauchery is like sex magic and drug magic, and this is very serious, dangerous, religious, demonic stuff. And because they still control everything to this day, they're bold enough to put it in the Encyclopedia Britannica. That's wild. And the ruins of St. Mary's Abbey, I'm just going to guess, but I'd imagine they attribute that to Joseph, the leader of the 13th tribe of Israel. Remember, who fled Egypt in search of the far-off lands, the islands, Atlantis he was in search of, so he could restore the true wisdom of God according to the Rose Cross Order, right? Very interesting. Once again, some images of both I think, what else did I put up here? Here's the coat of arms. Once again, the eagle, familiar with masonry. Oh, everywhere. The eagle's everywhere. And it stands for Egypt. We just learned this, right? It really, Egypt land. And they're talking about Atlantis, ultimately. And then the lion. So you can see the Botha name of the lion right there. Okay, but there's more. We're not done yet. Hold on. I gotta find the correct document here. It's gonna blow your mind. Okay, here we go. Now, what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to open up a Google Translate. And we're gonna have to translate this from Dutch to English. This is going to blow your mind. First of all, we've been going back and forth with the royal family. Let me show you something real quick. There's something on their website. Let me find it. Okay, so because truthers have made so much noise and have pointed out that the Nazis are related to the royal family through German bloodlines, they've actually put it on their website so they can, debunk any of these crazy conspiracy theorists. Look at the name right here. Gotha. I'm about to blow your mind. Hold on. Let me find what I was looking for. Oh, okay, here it is. So we need to do this and this. Zoom out of this a little bit. Fix this. Okay, so this is from the same Genie website where I just showed you the genealogy of Booth to Botha. So what we're going to do here is look up the origins of Botha. And it's in Dutch. I'm going to pop it over here. That's not what I did. Control copy. Control paste. Okay. First paragraph says, Frederick Botha was born on March 4th, 1653, in Wangenheim, about 8 kilometers northwest of Gotha, in that province of Thuringia, in that Earlshood of Saxe-Coburg, Gotha. Saxe-Coburg, Gotha. Okay, interesting. So that's where the royal family's bloodline and the Nazi and all sorts of Illuminati comes from. Okay. And remember, this is what would become the Booth family. Second paragraph says, before 1652, the meaning of Botha, that name Both is derived from the Frisian name Botho, which means lair or commander. The A which follows also means son of. That full of meaning, sorry, that translates weird. That meaning also means that Botha is the son of both, the Lear or commander. Okay, Botha means son of both, the commander. Let's go to the next paragraph. Frederick Botha was born, oh, we know that. Is that just repeating it? Nope, hold on. Soldier. Okay, he was a soldier, obtained civil rights, practiced. He was a professional farmer. So farmer, on the other hand, oldest example. Sorry, I'll find it. Hold on. It's important. African. Next paragraph. There's another connection to the Gotha bloodline. Sandburg, Slater, Orton. Basically, they were saying that the B, let me see if I can find it, that the B in Botha was simply chosen to differentiate from the other Gotha groups that were already living there. So these people were basically what they say of the same family, of the same bloodline as Gotha. They just changed their name up a little bit. Is it right here? It's fascinating. So these people, so John Wilkes Booth very possibly could have been working on behalf of the gosh darn queen. Who knows? It's all this, they're all the same family. The world is truly a stage. He's an actor too, of course. The fact that Frederick Booth came from Gotha could lead to that because Frederick Booth from Gotha changed it to Frederick Botha. Yeah, so they're not positive. I think that was it, what I was looking for. Crazy. So, John Wilkes Booth. Booth goes back to Botha. Botha was a Zionist silver mining family from Spain who were colonists and controlled mines in the New World and were powerful and wealthy. Part of them went to America and took on the name Booth, and some of them went to South Africa and conquered South Africa on behalf of the Queen. Now, when you trace both back even farther, it turns out they come from the same neighborhood as where the Queen family comes from. Saxe-Coburg-Gotha in Germany. So it's a very small world. And then, if that's not enough, you have the Wilkes connection where, the radical enlightened thinker, probably Freemason Wilkes, comes into play, and he was himself one that would partake in black masses and all this dark occult stuff that we pursue and talk about on this channel. That should blow your mind. Blew my mind. Absolutely crazy. That, such a small world. So yeah, John Wilkes Booth, a very original character. And it begs so many questions. Was Lincoln, clearly the North is its own cabal doing its own, was Wilkes Booth part of the cabal? Was he doing a job? Did they have the same boss, right? Do Lincoln and Booth ultimately answer to the same authority? You know what I mean? The same fraternity or brotherhood or controlling family of the world? It's all very fascinating. Did Lincoln know it was going to happen? Did Lincoln not know it was going to happen? Oh, man. There's so much to the story they don't tell us, and there's so much to the Civil War they don't tell us, and I think we've figured out so much amazing stuff so far. So where we're going to wrap up this episode is the Act of 1871. If what we've talked about isn't crazy enough, it's about to get even more crazy. So here's the actual Act of 1871, and I'm going to pause for a second, and then, because this is going to be crazy, guys. I gotta take a 5-minute break. I honestly suggest you get a pen and paper. That's what I'm going to do, and we're going to try to draw out the concept that we're going to be talking about. It's confusing, so I'll be back in a minute. Hold on. Okay, the Act of 1871. Remember, 1871 is right after the Civil War ended. It's only 6 years after. So remember, we went from a house divided to half of the house dying off and the one side getting to take the whole house. So we have still military occupation in the South when this is passed, and we have a unified, single-minded government that is focused in the Northeast, that is ecumenical, Freemasonic, etc. You know the deal. So remember, this was not passed, with everybody knowing what was going on. This was passed at the most chaotic, tumultuous, craziest time under the presidency of Ulysses S. Grant, I believe, who was a Freemason, and I heard he has a fetish for dogs. I have to look into that, but I guess so. A sexual fetish for dogs. Weird. An occultist as well. Evil guy. So, chapter, 52? It's titled, An Act to Provide a Government for the District of Columbia. So this is some confusing stuff, and we're going to do the best we can to map it out. And I think actually it would be best to go back to that source, Charles Adams, the true patriot, and listen to his warning real quick. I'll read 2 lines. Hold on. Modern society has created a class of artificial beings who bid fair soon to be the masters of their creator. What does that mean? Artificial beings, he's using that literally. Because once we look at the old dictionary and see the definitions of corporation, that's really what it is. It's an imaginary being. And he's using this term artificial being literally. And he says later that, let me find it. Should these great powers become mere tools in the hands of ambitious, reckless men, the system of corporate life and corporate power as applied to industrial development is yet in its infancy. It tends always towards development, always to consolidation. It is ever grasping new powers, or insidiously exercising covert influence. Listen here. Even now, the system threatens the central government. So these artificial beings, these corporations he's talking about, they always grow, and they always grow towards unification, consolidation. They always want more, and they always get bigger, and they have an insidious ability to overtake a society. These artificial beings, these monsters, these corporations. And he's saying before the Civil War, the idea of one single entity having $1 million was something a lot of people would be very scared of. But after the Civil War, Like we talked about the Titans, we have multiple entities, multiple businesses, people, groups, collecting hundreds of millions of dollars, making hand over foot money off the racket that was the Civil War, off the racket that was Reconstruction. That is what Adams is warning us about in 1869. So now let's read the Act of 1871. An act to provide a government for the District of Columbia. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that all that part of the territory of the United States included within the limits of the District of Columbia be, and the same is hereby, created into a government by the name of the District of Columbia, by which name it is hereby constituted a body corporate for municipal purposes, and may contract and be contracted with, sue and be sued, plead and be impleaded, have a seal, and exercise all other powers of a municipal corporation, not inconsistent with the Constitution and laws of the United States and the provisions of this act. Let's break that down a little bit. They're talking about the District of Columbia, the 10 by 10 area. So it's not a state. We know that. They call it a territory. Well, in the act, it says here that that 10 by 10 territory is to be created into a government. So we can define it as a territory that is a government. And it's a body corporate by the name of the District of Columbia, a body corporate for municipal purposes. So that 10 by 10 area of DC is a corporation or a body corporate that functions as a government. It has municipal powers. It can be contracted with and contract. It can be sued. It can sue. It can plead and be impleaded. It can have a seal and exercise all other powers of a municipal corporation not inconsistent with the Constitution. That's a lie because they do all of this inconsistent with the Constitution. So think basically what we have here is a company calling itself the government. That's what happened here in the aftermath of the Civil War. And think of this line right here. It may contract and be contracted with. You ever wonder why like a third of the fighting military in the Middle East wasn't even our military? They were these private contractors. You ever wonder how that worked? It's because the District of Columbia can contract and be contracted with. So this is a very hard concept. So I'm gonna try to draw it out on a piece of index card for you. Basically, you're born in a state. Well, first of all, let's talk about the original idea. The original idea were that the states were all sovereign and that they all willingly volunteered to take part in this confederation, and we called it a republic, the United States of America, right? So when you're born in the state, you're born a human being. So pretty straightforward, right? And you have unalienable rights. You have human rights and the Geneva rights and all that stuff. That all applies to you. So when they incorporated Washington, D.C., they came up with a system. Every human in America has an invisible body corporate as well, if that makes sense. So DC is an invisible entity, right? Think of it that way. It's an invisible body corporate, and it's a government. In order for this to function, they create invisible body corporate versions of all of us. That's what the Act of 1871 allowed. And we're going to go into it deeply, don't worry. But let me see if I can draw it out right here. So the Fed, one second. I got it. This will make sense. So in the eyes of the state where you're born, let me enlarge the screen here for you. In the state you're born, you are human. But in the eyes of the federal government, and the federal government is specifically the District of Columbia, the body corporate created as a government. In the eyes of the federal government, which is a body corporate, there's a body corporate version of you as well. This is often referred to as the all caps version of you. If you look on your W-2, your driver's license, all sorts of documents from the federal government, you'll see that your name is in all capital letters. And this legally, in law terms, represents the body corporate of you. And we're not made aware of this system. We just get tricked into it by interacting with the federal government. So getting a driver's license, right? Opening up certain accounts and stuff like that. All these layers of ways that they get us to approve of having a body corporate do, all of our living on behalf of us. Not our living, but you know what I mean. Being liable and being part of this system that nobody knows anything about. So it's very insidious, and it is real. It's pretty crazy. Let's go to the old dictionary real quick. This is from 1886. The dictionary lost more than 100% of its pages over the past century and a quarter. So that's why we use the old one. We're going to be looking for the word corporate, and in this dictionary, you get all sorts of definitions for each word. There's so much context. There's so much on the origins of the word. It's incredible, and it's also extremely sad how limited the modern dictionary is. And this is a Merriam-Webster, this old one. It's crazy, dude. What are we looking up? Corporate. It takes a while to find words, though. But I think once we do the definition of a body corporate, you're going to very much understand. And then we'll talk about how even today corporations have rights. This is common knowledge. Sometimes you'll see in the mainstream news that a corporation isn't going to get in trouble because corporations have rights and blah, blah, blah. They can act as people, all that crazy stuff. All right, we're almost there. Hold on. Corruption, corporate. Okay, zooming in. Okay, finally found it. So, we're going to read all the different definitions of corporate, beginning with the first one. So, in its Latin meaning, it means to shape into a body, or to form a corpus, right? Body. Definition 1, formed into a body by legal enactment, united in an association and endowed by law with the rights and liabilities of an individual, incorporated as a corporate town. That sums it up perfect. So when you hear about the Act of 1871, you are born a human being in your state. When you interact with the federal government, they create an imaginary body corporate of you, your all caps name. Definition 1, formed into a body by legal enactment. They legally enact this. They legally enact the creation of your body corporate. Formed into a body by legal enactment, united in an association and endowed by law with the rights and liabilities of an individual. So in the eyes of the federal government, they deal with your body corporate, right? That's how they get away doing such evil things and taking our rights away. That's why no one ever stops it, because nobody understands we're in this situation where the federal government has basically broken away from the rest of the republic. It's a very confusing situation. Okay. 2, belonging to a corporation. 3, united, general, collectively one. Corporate, to enclose in or endow with a body, to incorporate. To be enclosed in a body, to unite, to form a body, to be incorporated. The state of a corporate body. Okay, corporation, instead of just corporate. A corporation is a body politic or corporate. We just did the definition of corporate, right? So don't think of business, think of corporate as formed into a body by legal enactment given the rights of a person. An imaginary thing given the rights of a person. That's a corporate. So a corporation is a body politic or corporate. So it's either a body for politics or it's just a created body. Formed and authorized by law to act as a single person and endowed by law with the capacity of perpetual succession. Society having the capacity of transacting business as an individual. Think of the implications of this. We literally give one man legal power to represent all of our body corporate entities, all of ourselves. See, that's how they get us. They make these decisions on behalf of your body corporate. So they're not I don't know, they're not inflicting tyranny upon you in the eyes of the law. Just ridiculous, dude. A ridiculous, crazy system. And right here in the dictionary, it says, formed and authorized by law to act as a single person and endowed by law with the capacity of perpetual succession. So Washington, D.C., by definition, is endowed by law to act as a single person. Hope this is starting to make a little bit of sense. It's very confusing to me. Okay, there's some more information here. Okay, I think this is actually about people. Corporations are aggregate or sole. Corporations aggregate consist of two or more persons united in a society, which is preserved by a succession of members either forever or till the corporation is dissolved by the power that formed it, by the death of all its members, by surrender of its charter or franchises, or by forfeiture. Such corporations are the mayor and aldermen of cities, the head and fellows of a college, the dean and chapter of a cathedral church, the stockholders of a bank or insurance company. So all these people fall under corporations. Mayors and aldermen of cities. Mayors. So I wonder if the corporation of DC uses mayors and aldermen as its governing bodies instead of Congress. You know, because Congress is part of the Republic, but Washington, D.C. is not is not part of the country. It's a corporation. It's its own government entity. At this point, though, where we're at today, we're just screwed, I think. I think they all know this, and they're all in on it probably. But look at a chapter of a cathedral church and the stockholders of a bank. These all fall under the same legal definition, corporate aggregate. Okay. So, you know, stockholders of a bank technically have the same human rights as you, same human rights as me, and, you know, the charter of the Freemasons, all these corporations, they all have human rights protected by law. So they're allowed to operate. That's how America is. It's crazy, dude. A corporation's soul consists of a single person who is made a body corporate and politic in order to give him some legal capacities and especially that of perpetuity. Wow. So this was 1886. So this definition was included in this dictionary as a result of the Act of 1871. Let's read that again. A corporation soul, you're a corporation soul, I am a corporation soul, S-O-L-E. And think of the mockery, because they believe they own your soul, your S-O-U-L. A corporation's soul, S-O-L-E, consists of a single person who is made a body corporate and politic in order to give him some legal capacities, and especially that of perpetuity. What are those legal capacities? The legal capacity to own a firearm, the legal capacity to drive a car, the legal capacity to have an identification, to open a bank account, to have a credit card, to have a mortgage, all these things where your name is in all cap, to pay taxes, to have a W-2 and tax returns, all caps, all caps, all caps. These are the corporate soul they've created for you. We are all slaves. They have created, literally they mock us by saying S-O-L-E. That's ridiculous, dude. Okay, let's continue. Which, as a natural person, he cannot have. A king, bishop, deed, parson, or vicar are in England sole corporations. A fee will not pass to a corporation's soul without the word successors in the grant. There are instances in the United States of a minister of a parish seized of parsonage's lands and the right of his parish being a corporation soul, as in Massachusetts. Wow. So a corporation's soul consists of a single person who is made a body corporate and politic in order to give him some legal capacities. I guess, really to sum up, the Act of 1871 is that they have created a body corporate version of you, and the only way that you can partake in all the benefits of our society is to willingly use your body corporate and acknowledge its existence and use it to do things like get a driver's license, own a gun, get a mortgage, etc. That is the beast system, put simply, and that is from the Act of 1871. A corporation's soul consists of a single person who has made a body corporate and politic in order to give him some legal capacities. Fascinating, isn't it? Evil, insidious. This is what happened after the Civil War. This is why we're doing this series, because this subversion goes so much farther back. You've probably heard of people say, there are people I know in person who have gotten out of this system, but you have to renounce your citizenship. You really do. You have to renounce your citizenship and claim sovereignty over your human body. It involves leaving a lot of the luxuries of the American way, but there's parts of the country where you can do this, and people do this because this is satanic. It's disgusting. A corporation's soul. They literally steal your soul. It's insane. What are the implications of this? Well, you see, when you're a human being adhering to the Constitution of the United States and the, duly made laws of localities and small governments. Forgot where I was going with that. But when you're living in your state and you're a human being, there are... What was I trying to say? Basically, what I'm trying to say is that this is just so crazy. There are different sets of laws that apply to corporation souls. There we go. So the laws that you're familiar with and I'm familiar with are the laws that apply to us humans, right? In our local everyday lives. But there is a whole body of laws that applies to corporation souls. And this body of laws is practiced globally. It is a New World Order system. It's already in place. It's been in place forever. It goes back to ancient Rome, where they had the law of the sea and the law of the land. The law of the land became common law. And then the law of the sea became maritime law. And what a lot of us don't know is that because we all willingly take part in this corporate soul agenda, because we all take part in this beast system, this real system that exists, we are all adhering to maritime law, which is global, like I said. It's controlled by, no one really knows, probably the Vatican, the City of London, which is a corporation in London, Washington, D.C., and the United Nations. And this maritime law basically regards us as commodities. And here's where we get into stuff I'm not too certain about. But because a stockholder of a bank and a cathedral church chapter and an individual person can all be corporations, our corporate souls, literally the soul of us, the entity they make of us, is tradable on a global market. And in fact, I got to look more into it, but the idea is that the reason why we have so much debt but we keep going is because our corporate souls are used as a collateral for the Federal Reserve and for our debt. In fact, they can actually place a monetary value on your birth certificate based on the system they've created. Now, I know that last part sounds crazy, and it's very confusing, and I'm still trying to learn it. But the fact of the matter is, in 1871, they created the federal government, the Corporation of D.C., and they created a system where individual human beings, in order to become citizens of the federal government, have to have a corporate soul created of them. And only through this corporate soul are they able to have legal capacities and interact with the federal government system, Social Security, driver's license, etc. That's what happened with the Act of 1871. That's what happened as a result of taking a house divided and killing off half the house and having nothing but these Union, Northern, Age of Enlightenment, very sinister and evil men in some cases. I hope that made sense. There are plenty of great sources where you can learn about maritime law. I recommend, what's that guy's name? Jordan Maxwell. He talks about maritime law a lot. But, this is real. And one of the craziest realizations I had was hearing Jordan Maxwell list off these terms that are used in maritime law, these shipping terms. And think about it. We have friendships, relationships, right? Ship is a vessel, okay? And when a ship comes into dock, the shipmaster or the admiral, it's also called admiralty law, the admiral produces a certificate of birth to the dock and says, this is a cargo of my ship. This is coming from the manufacturer, and here is the certificate of birth, and then it's issued a certificate of registration or whatever. This is just one example. It's B-E-R-T-H. So birth is the contents of a ship. This is quite literally a birth certificate, right? So the whole idea is that human beings are treated as commodity, right? And it's really pretty crazy, but so much of the language involved with like our legal lives and everything is the same language as the sea. Think about it. When you go to the bank or when you go to court, your court case gets put on a docket. Think about what we call money. We call it currency. And what do we call cash? We call it liquid assets, right? Cash flow, right? Where do we put our cash? Where do we put our currency? We put it in the bank, of course. Well, where does the current flow? Between the banks of the river. See what I mean? Like, it's absolutely fascinating, and I wish I was more educated on the subject, but this ties into the Act of 1871 as well. So technically, we have willingly chose to live under the authority of, I think, the Vatican. I think the Holy See. Yeah, I think they're the governing body of the whole world. I think that's what this is all about. It's pretty crazy. There's so many crazy words. Think about it. The man manufactures the sperm. Manufactures. It's not womanufactures. It's manufactures the sperm. The lady carries the baby and then gives birth, right? B-E-R-T-H and B-I-R-T-H. And where does the baby stay while in the womb? The water breaks, of course. And where does the baby come out? It goes down the birth canal. The canal, you see, right? So then when that baby's delivered, just like the manufactured products are delivered, and the admiral presents a certificate of birth, when that baby's done going down the canal out of the water and is born, it's presented with a certificate of birth. It's crazy. It's great. There is a governing body to the world. For example, right here on your screen, the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. So this still exists, dude. This is it. This is the law of the sea. This is a constitution that you have to adhere to, but you don't even know. Look how long this is. This is still a table of contents. It's ridiculous. For the sake of time, I won't go through it, but this was a direct result of the Act of 1871, which was the direct result of a Freemason, Grant, becoming president, which was a direct result of the military takeover of the South and the death of patriotism, the death of liberty, the death of Jeffersonian belief, and the death of don't tread on me. A body corporate. Put questions down below, and if you can think of any other maritime-related language that applies to your life, let me know. So currency and people are both regarded as water in terms of maritime law. I think that's the point that makes sense. I think that's what it's talking about. Is that currency, like money, is liquid, and then people are liquid. Both of us are liquid assets that are traded on a global New World Order system. And the Act of 1871 got us into that system. Before we go, I will say this is still true to this day. Legal Information Institute from Cornell Law, as used in this chapter, United States means... Here it is. I'll zoom right in for you. There's no mistaking it. And we just read the definition of corporate 800 times. United States means A federal corporation. Boom. Corporation. I'll read it one more time. A corporation. A body politic or corporate. Formed and authorized by law to enact. A body politic or corporate formed and authorized by law to act as a single person and endowed by law with the capacity of perpetual succession, a society having the capacity of transacting business as an individual. It can be either aggregate or sole, aggregate being made of two or more corporates. A corporate soul consists of a single person who has made a body corporate and politic in order to give him some legal capacities, and especially that of perpetuity. And then even today, to this day, United States is a federal corporation. So I guess to close, by us, even though it's unknowingly, by us willingly taking part in this and letting them create a corporate soul for each of us, it allows us to take part in the federal corporation that is the District of Columbia. That's the official name of it. Now, the District of Columbia, too, is a corporate body that takes part in a hierarchical system in which it answers to another corporate body, which is probably the Holy See and definitely the UN, right? Baffling system. Baffling system. Anyway, that was a great episode. Thank you guys for watching. When we get back on the next episode, we'll probably talk more about, we'll get into the 1900s, I think. We'll talk about Smedley Butler. We'll talk about like the Rockefeller Institute, the Tavistock, all of these think tanks and early thought groups that dominated thinking in the early 1900s. Eugenics, all that stuff. So you don't want to miss it. And of course, the Federal Reserve. We got to talk about that next episode, and FDR giving all the gold away. So thank you guys. I hope you and your body corporates both have a great night, and I'll see you in the next episode.
Soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied Expeditionary Force, you are about to embark upon the great crusade toward which we have striven these many months. The eyes of the world are upon you. The hopes and prayers of liberty-loving people everywhere march with you. In company with our brave allies and brothers in arms on other fronts, you will bring about the destruction of the German war machine, the elimination of Nazi tyranny over the oppressed peoples of Europe, and security for ourselves in a free world. Your task will not be an easy one. Your enemy is well-trained, well-equipped, and battle-hardened. He will fight savagely. But this is the year 1944. Much has happened since the Nazi triumphs of 1940-41. The United Nations have inflicted upon the Germans great defeats in open battle, man to man. Our air offensive has seriously reduced their strength in the air and their capacity to wage war on the ground. Our home fronts have given us an overwhelming superiority in weapons and munitions of war, and placed at our disposal great reserves of trained fighting men. The tide has turned. The free men of the world are marching together to victory. I have full confidence in your courage, devotion to duty, and skill in battle. We will accept nothing less than full victory. Good luck, and let us all beseech the blessing of Almighty God upon this great and noble undertaking.